Hi, welcome to Chandu.org. Recently, I have started a new initiative. It is called Bring Your Own Data. What happens in this is I have emailed my readers and followers of Chandu.org, asked them to send me one data analysis problem that they are struggling with so that I can pick a handful of them and create a video or write an article or make a podcast explaining how to get out of that analysis problem. Hence the name Bring Your Own Data. I'm running this for 1 week starting 16th of February until 21st of February, so those 5 days. And this is our first installment of BYOD. Let's take a look at the problem. The problem is a very familiar problem: consolidation of data. When I announced BYOD, I thought people will email me raw data and ask me some sort of analysis problems, but it turned out of roughly 100 emails that I got with these kind of problems, about 25 of them have consolidation as a theme. People are struggling to get data that is in different places, combine all of that, create one view of that data so that they could do some further analysis. So since consolidation is such a universal problem and many of you are struggling with it, why don't we attack that in the BYOD session 1. So here is one example file. Obviously, consolidation of data has different flavors. You know, each person has their own consolidation needs. So if the consolidation problem is very simple, that is the structure of data, the number of columns in your data is the same across multiple data sets, whether you have data in 3 different worksheets and you want to combine them into one worksheet, or your data is in 10 different database tables and you want to merge all of them into one big table for further analysis. If the number of columns are same and they mean the same things, for example, you have customer name in first column, their location in the second column, and zip code in the third column, and some phone number in the fourth column, and those 4 columns are maintained for each store, and you have 25 stores, so you have 25 spreadsheets, each containing those 4 columns and lots of data, and you want to combine all of that customer data. That kind of a consolidation is somewhat simple because you are working with the assumption that all of the data has same structure. So since that problem is not a very challenging one and it has been beaten to death already by many solutions shared on Chandu.org as well as many other excellent websites on Excel, I thought we will take a different problem. This problem is sent by Don. He has some sort of data like this. Company X has these products and they have launched these products on those years. Okay, this is all dummy data and it has a total row, but we will not worry about the total row. This is only for summary purpose he has created. So you could see that products A, B and D were created by company X, and this is how they were selling in the 3 years. Company Y has different products A, B, C, and the different number of years. Company Z likewise have different products and different years. Now given all of this, he would like to consolidate and get one picture like this. Okay, for A, B, C, D in these years across all the companies, company X, Y and Z, it could be 3 companies, it could be 300, it could be 4 products, it could be 40 products and 75 years, or any of those combinations. Go from that kind of different shapes data, consolidate them in a meaningful way, because obviously the product and year columns are there, but the number of years vary from one data set to another to a view like this. Now this is where the consolidation problem gets tricky, because if we have data like a product in column, year in another column and value in third column, so instead of this many columns we only have product, year and value, and that same structure is repeated across multiple companies, consolidation becomes easy. But unfortunately what we have here is like a pivot report. Okay, products in row labels and year in the column label area, and some values are calculated and printed in between. And what we wanted was, we wanted a way to unpivot or depivot this data, combine all of that and get a consolidated view and then pivot it again. Okay, this is the entire challenge. Now there are many ways to solve this problem. Obviously you could use formulas, but if you write a formula to solve these kind of problems, chances are your formula would be very, very complicated. I haven't even tried the formula for this yet, but I'm sure there is a way to write a formula, at least something that mildly complicated version of that formula I would be able to come up with. But personally, I don't love the formula approach for a problem like this. For this kind of a challenge, I prefer either using VBA or Power Query. In this video, I'm going to show both of those examples to you. This workbook, I have already built a macro, but what the macro does is it doesn't produce this output yet, but once you have the output in a normal table fashion, you could use some sort of formulas to calculate these numbers. Okay, I'm going to print some blue color there. So this blue color area is not what we are going to generate through the macro. Instead, we are going to make a table. Let me show you what we will generate through the macro. We are going to generate a table like this. Okay, range name, product, year, value, like that. So all the data we have, we are going to arrange it in one table like this. And once all of this data is there, all we got to do is use these data to calculate these totals. It's very simple. Either you could create a pivot from this and get that shape that you want, or you could write a formula here that would do the sum ifs on the value column by checking the product and year conditions. Since that part is not so much a puzzle, this part is a puzzle. We are going to solve that. So what I have done is, although for the sake of simplicity, Don has called these as company X, Y, and Z, just so we have some sort of a clarity, what I have done is I have defined the names for these ranges. So from the product row, this entire range, excluding the total, I have given that a name called company 1. Likewise, for the second worksheet, this is called as company 2. Third worksheet, this is called as company 3. Again, giving the names is not necessary. You can just note down the addresses. For example, you could simply say A2 to D5 on company Z sheet. That address is enough for me for this macro to work. All we have done is we have given them names so that it is easy to write a macro and work with the problem in isolation without going to multiple worksheets and copying the data. And what I have done is I have pasted all those addresses in a worksheet range in the output worksheet, totals worksheet, somewhere here. So all the addresses we have defined, I have just typed them here again and given this list a name called address list. Okay, again a very convenient way to access these names from our VBA code. Okay, now what follows from this point onwards is VBA. So if you are not familiar with VBA, go ahead and skip through the VBA section and see the Power Query based solution for this problem. Okay, let's go ahead and see what would happen once we have these names. How does the VBA code extract this data? I'm going to save the file and let's view the code. This is the code. I have written a module. This module has two functions. One is a function and one is a macro and another is a function. Sub cons data, that is the consolidation of data. I have shrunk it to cons data, which just goes and consolidates the data for each address. So for each cell in the range address list, this gathers the address from the cell value. That is the address we need to go and look up, and it gathers the values corresponding to the depivoting of that address. Okay, so what we want is we want to take the company 1, we want to go to that range company 1 and depivot it. Depivot, when you do this, what would happen is instead of this shape, we will create a shape that looks like this. Column 1 will contain product, column 2 will contain year, column 3 will contain value. Okay, so from this shape we are going to go to that shape. That's what depivoting is. You could also call this as unpivot or depivot, because we will be depivoting multiple times. For each worksheet we need to do this depivoting once. I have written it as a function that would accept a range and returns a value which is a variant. Although it is defined as a variant, it is basically an array that has 3 columns and multiple number of rows. Okay, you can say a 2-dimensional array with 3 columns and multiple number of rows. And then what we will do is, once the values are extracted, we are going to just go and paste those values here. Okay, so we will simply say from the range start here is that cell, by the way. So that is our initial starting point. So from there we are going to paste the address, that is the name of the range, and then the values. We have to transpose the values array because of the way VBA stores arrays is different from the way Excel represents them when you paste those data into Excel. Okay, you will understand these things once you are somewhat familiar with VBA. So if you are a newbie, probably some of the things might be a little over your head. Don't worry too much, try to understand what we are trying to do there. The real juicy part of this entire macro is that dpivot thing, right? So let's go ahead and see what dpivot does. Dpivot is a very, very generic function. It takes a 2-dimensional range denoted by this area and it depivots it into a 3-column array. Okay, it's a very simple function, so it only works for a two level pivot. One has one row labels and one set of column labels. If you have 2 sets of row labels or multiple column labels, then this is not going to work. To begin with, we define a variant of values, some variables to keep track of where we are in the entire process, and a retrieval as a variant. And we extract all the range values. So we have this as the range, right? So we take all of these values and move them to this area dot value is equal to value. So that means all of those cell values are extracted and placed into the values 2-dimensional array. Okay, then we calculate the upper bound of those things, and then we redeem the return value as 3 columns and that many rows. So for this particular data set, okay, I'm printing blue there. For the blue colored range, how many return values will be there once you depivot? The return values will be only that many, because all of this information, all of that information will be encoded in the extra columns, and the number of rows will be only that many. So this is 3 multiplied by 3, 9. How do we go from that area to 9? Very simple. We look at the number of rows we have, 4 rows, number of columns we have, 4 columns, subtract 1 from each of those numbers. So 4 minus 1 is equal to 3, and then multiply 3 with 3. So that's how we end up with the 9 values. For company Y, again, we have 4 rows but 5 columns. So the return values would be 3 multiplied by 4, 12 values. So that logic is what our rows minus 1 multiplied by columns minus 1 is doing. And then we initiate an X variable, and for each and every cell in this range, in those cells, we just do the construction of the 3-dimensional array. Examine this code. Please download the workbook. I will place a link to this workbook both on our YouTube page as well as on chandru.org blog. Examine this code, you will understand. Once the depivoting is done, we will take the retrieval and assign it to the dpivot macro and do it there. Now let's go ahead and check this. I'm going to clean up this entire thing and run this macro. It's fairly fast. The macro is not doing anything that is unnecessary, and probably you can speed up the depivoting portion by converting this 2 for loops, nested for loops, into 1 for loop if you are slightly smart. But I thought this is best way to express this logic. Once we know the logic, we can figure out a way to shrink this and either get rid of the row iterations or column iterations, so that you could assign one array to another array, but that gets a little more complicated to explain in a video. So this is fairly fast, and we get all this data. Once this data is there, taking a leap from here to here is a simple process of either creating a pivot table or writing a formula, which I leave it to your imagination. Now let's go ahead and examine the process of consolidating this kind of data, different shapes of data, into that shape using Power Query, where you don't even have to write a single piece of code. All you will do is you tell Power Pivot what to do You tell Power Query what to do and it will do the job for you. Let me save this file. So once you are done with Power Query, this is how the data would look like. You can see from here, this is the exact data that we have generated with our consolidation macro. Except the consolidation macro also has the range names, which will probably help us do some further analysis with the company names as well. But if your purpose is only to consolidate, the Power Query approach works beautifully. Now I haven't explained how I got to that shape, so let me go ahead and do that. What you have to do is, in each of the sheets where the data is, you need to do a little bit of cleanup work. Okay, you need to get rid of the totals and convert the raw data into a table. This is the first and most important step. If you cannot convert your data into a table, then what you could alternatively do is, you can save your raw data as one workbook and create a new workbook and query that workbook through this new workbook by using Power Query. But for the sake of simplicity, let's keep all the data in one place but convert them to tables. So you just select this. If you can remember, I have removed the total row and insert a table from that. It's already a table, so this is grayed out. And once you have the tables, you don't even have to name them, just have them as tables. Then we will go and create this. Now I'm going to get rid of this. I hope this doesn't, you can't delete, yeah, let's go ahead this. Since this is part of a data model worksheet, it does take quite a bit of time, and hopefully that process has nixed our Power Query data model as well. So once you have these three tables, let's go to the Power Query ribbon and select any cell and then simply say from table. That means I want this data from in Excel to go to the Power Query. Okay, this should open up your Power Query window. I can't reduce this window. Okay, and load that data there. If you see this is the same shape as this data. All it did is took this data and pasted it into Power Query query editor. Now those of you who have never tried Power Query, probably this is a refresher tour of Power Query for you. But Power Query can do a lot of powerful things, and I'm not going to touch every button here. All we have done is taken this data, loaded into Power Query. Once you have this data, what we want is, we want to transform this. So go to the transform, and hopefully those buttons would expand. Yeah. So you see unpivot columns. That's what we wanted to do. If you remember our VBA program, that was doing a dpivot or unpivot, you can call them either way. Essentially, we wanted to unpivot this. So let's go ahead and click that. And this is what it comes up with. It's not exactly in the shape that we want. So maybe we will undo that step by deleting it in the applied steps area. And let's try with unpivot other columns. Okay, so that one works. Here is a tricky part, because Power Query is a new technology. Sometimes we might press the wrong button, but again, there is always undo button, so we can undo the steps and go back and do it the right way. So here we have product, attribute, and value. Now product is clear, attribute somewhat sounds a little contrite, so let's go ahead and call this as year, which is what it is. Okay, so we took the source data, we unpivoted other columns, we renamed the columns. Once this is there, let's go ahead and go to the home and then simply say close and load to. Okay, if you say close and load, it will load the data again into Excel. We don't want this data to be in Excel. We just want this data to be a connection and part of data model. Okay, so this data is there, but in the memory of Excel. Load. That's it, it's done. We have our table 1 data is loaded here. Table 1 has 9 rows. Likewise, table 2 and table 3 are also loaded. Okay, these are from our past data model. Now let's go back to the Power Query. Let's go to any one of the tables, it doesn't matter. And I think edit. Okay, this will open up the Power Query where all the 3 tables are there. And now let's go and say to Power Pivot that I want to merge tables. I think there is a button somewhere here. Yeah, I want to append these tables because we have multiple tables, so table 1, table 2, table 3. We simply want to append queries. That means one of them should go next to the another, and like a vertical table they should become. So we'll say append queries. What do we want to append? We want to append table 2 to the table 3. Okay, this will get all the table 2 data and paste it beneath. Let's repeat the process once again. This time append the table 1. So all the data is consolidated, and now we will simply say close and load, and this will update the data model. Table 3 now contains 30 rows, and oh, they are not loaded here, so we will just go and say simply load to worksheet, and the data comes up here. So once the data is there, it's a simple process of calculating the totals by either using some ifs formulas or setting up a pivot table to get this thing. Okay, so this is how we can consolidate with PQ, Power Query. Both are elegant solutions. The VBA approach gives you flexibility to define the macro, define the names, and work with the data in a way you want. Whereas the Power Query approach gives us the flexibility that we don't have to write the code, we don't have to understand how the entire VBA ecosystem works. All we want to do is use Power Query to unpivot the data, append queries, and load the finalized query back into the data model and worksheet so that you could do further analysis from this. So both are elegant approaches. The one thing that I couldn't figure out with Power Query approach is how do I get the name of the each company 1, company 2, company 3 into a separate column here. I'm sure that is possible, and you can go to your Power Query, use the add column option, and write a formula here. There is a separate Power Query formula language. Those are similar to Excel formulas, but slightly different syntax, and a lot more varieties are available. But I couldn't really figure out a formula in Power Query language that will tell me the name of the query that we are talking to. So probably there is something else that I'm missing. In the worst case, you can also go to your View, Advanced Editor. This opens up the VBA kind of code. Power Query uses its own language. This called as, if I remember correctly, M language, which is basically writing that code for us. So you can edit this code and add the extra detail for that extra column that tells us the name of the query corresponding to each row. But I'm not too familiar with this language. I'm still learning it, and hopefully by sometime soon I will be able to tell you how this works and how to add the extra column that will tell us detail about the company from which that data is consolidated. Okay, so that is how the Power Query based consolidation works. Both are good approaches. Go ahead and try them, and thank you so much for Don for sending me this bring your own data file. Now before we wrap up, I just want to tell you very quickly that we are running a new course on Chandu.org called as 50 Ways to Analyze Your Data. If you like what you have seen and you want to learn more about how to analyze data, how to take data that is in a different shape, convert it into a shape that you want so that you could do your analysis better, how to present results to your management, and how to feel confident when somebody says, hey, can you look at our data and tell me what's going on? Okay, so if this sounds like something that you would enjoy, please consider joining 50 Ways to Analyze Data course. It is available on Chandu.org. Go to our website and check out the training programs to access this course. Thank you so much for listening and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in another episode of Bring Your Data. Bye-bye.